Sir Walter Raleigh wanted to get paid. Well, he wanted England to get paid, but if he could get rich in the process, all the better. He received permission from Queen Elizabeth I to start a new world colony. After a failed attempt in 1585, Raleigh was ready to get serious. So in 1587, he would send Captain John White and somewhere around 120 settlers to what is now called the Outer Banks of North Carolina. This colony would be planted on an island they called Roanoke, after the Native American group that lived there, the Roanoke. There, they would plant England's first settlement. Raleigh had received money to start this settlement for the Virginia Company of London. After all, this was an economic venture. You know, economic because they are trying to make some money, and venture, well, that's something that involves risk, kind of like an adventure. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. After a few months, it became clear that the new settlement was going to run short on supplies. And for some reason, the Native Americans in the area were being stingy about helping out. I wonder why. It was decided that Captain John White would simply cruise back to jolly old England, grab up some more supplies, and zip right back to the colony of Roanoke. Quick and easy. What could go wrong? Captain White said goodbye to his daughter Eleanor Dare, his son-in-law Ananias Dare, and his 9-day-old granddaughter, the first English-speaking person born in the New World, Virginia Dare. Goo goo gaga. Well, that is English, isn't it? As John White was ready to return and save the day, the Queen needed to borrow his ship. Oh, don't worry, it won't take long. Only, say, 3 years. Now, who could say no to the Queen? Certainly not John White. At the time, England was at war with Spain, and wars, they take time. But finally, after the English Navy was able to sink just about the entire Spanish Armada, John White could return. So, in 1590, he did just that. But when his ship arrived at Roanoke Island, the colony had vanished, disappeared, dissipated, dematerialized, melted into thin air. It was gone. Just some abandoned buildings and the remains of a fort with the word Croatoan carved into a gatepost. Then another clue, the letters C-R-O carved into a nearby tree. Now, before White left, the settlers said if there was any trouble, they would head over to the nearby island of Croatoan, named for the Native American group, the Croatoan. Did these clues mean that they had gone there? John White thought that just might be the case. Still unsure, John White decided to follow his hunch and check it out. But just then, a hurricane hit and the ship is damaged. He's forced back to England. What happened to the lost colony of Roanoke remains a mystery to this day. So remember when you were in 4th grade, your teacher kept saying Jamestown was the first permanent English settlement over and over again? That word permanent is important to hear because Jamestown was not the first settlement by England. It was just the first to last, to become permanent. But it could easily have become another lost colony. I don't need to go into the gruesome details of it all. I'm sure you've heard enough about Jamestown. So I won't say that it was also started as an economic venture by the Virginia Company of London. And I definitely won't say that the winter of 1609 to 1610, the starving time, only 60 of the 500 settlers survived. Instead of bringing livestock animals to eat, the settlers brought gold test kits. Can't eat that. So instead, they ate boots, belts, and other things made of leather. And yes, of course, that cannibalism thing. Yes, you've heard your fill of Jamestown. So I am not going to bore you with how John Rolfe brought tobacco seeds to plant and just about single-handedly saved the Jamestown settlement, taking it from starving town to boom town in one tobacco growing season. Jamestown raked in over $1 million in today's money. And no, kids, I don't need to mention that by 1619, the first Africans arrived, providing more labor to seal the deal on the success of the Virginia Company of London and their settlement called Jamestown. With women arriving that same year, they ensured the colony's future success. Ah, yes, Jamestown, established in 1607 by England as an economic venture. It was a rough beginning, but its success paved the way for all of the 13 British colonies to come. So glad we don't need to mention Jamestown at all. It's so fourth grade, don't you think? After England's first attempts at starting colonies for economic reasons, money reasons, people from England began to arrive for religious reasons. First, let me introduce to you England's Anglican Church, otherwise known as the Church of England. Now, in the 1500s, just about all of Europe's kingdoms belonged to the powerful Roman Catholic Church. The Catholic Church had very strict rules on how to worship God. If anyone dared to break those rules, punishment was swift and severe. Yet, in 1534, King Henry VIII of England broke away from the Catholic Church and formed his own church, the Anglican Church, the Church of England. And much like the Catholic Church, the Church of England was hardcore about worshiping God by their rules. Each year, you had to give a tenth or more of all you had to the church. Worshipping anywhere but in the Church of England was not allowed. Any violation of these, or any of the host of other rules, was met with imprisonment, torture, or death. It should come as no surprise that there were some in England who did not believe these rules were right or fair. One group of people became known as separatists. Right, because they wanted to separate from the Church of England. For years, we have called this group pilgrims. But a pilgrim is anyone who makes a religious journey. So you could say that Mansa Musa was also a pilgrim when he traveled to Mecca in the 1300s. So we will stick to calling these Englishmen and women separatists. Because they had different beliefs on how to worship God, the group of people called the separatists were mistreated or persecuted. After years of abuse handed out by the Church of England, 102 separatists had had enough, and they rented a boat called the... Anyone? Right, the Mayflower, and they sailed off to the New World. In 1620, these separatists left Plymouth, England, and named the place they landed, Plymouth. You heard me. They left Plymouth and landed at Plymouth. Well, don't be hard on them. They left their friends and family and homes, their country and their culture behind. They certainly still loved their home back in Plymouth, England. After a rocky start, the Plymouth settlement, which is in what we now call Massachusetts, survived and was successful. And unlike Jamestown, which was started as an economic venture, the Plymouth colony was established or started not for money reasons, but religious reasons. Or, as your SOL say, Plymouth was established to avoid religious persecution. A few years later, another group found their way out of England for religious reasons. This group was called the Puritans. But their story is quite different from the separatists. The Puritans felt that the Church of England was corrupt, no good, scandalous, low down, untrustworthy, up to some dirty deeds. So the Puritans didn't want to separate from the church like the separatists did. The Puritans wanted to clean up the church's behavior, or purify the church, make it more pure. Hey, that's why they're called Puritans. But this attitude led to more bad treatment or persecution handed out by the Church of England. So in the 1630s, Puritans began arriving in Massachusetts like the separatists had before them. They settled and started a colony not too far from Plymouth, and they called their colony the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Need a memory trick for that? Sure, don't mind if I do. Massachusetts sounds like a sneeze. Massachusetts. After you sneeze, use Purell to clean your hands. Get it? Massachusetts, Purell, Puritans? Okay, never mind. By the 1630s, the Puritans began settling in Massachusetts Bay. Now, you would think, after what they had been through back in England, they would tolerate people that were, say, a little different. But no, anyone different living among the Puritans in Massachusetts Bay was thought to be working with the devil, and therefore, a witch. A witch! But that's a story for another day. Look, when we reach a certain age, we tend to rebel against our parents a bit. Our choice of music, hairstyles, groups that we like, piercings, tend to go against some of what our parents think is best for us. William Penn was no different. He was born rich. His dad was besties. Is that right? Besties? His dad was good friends with Charles II, the King of England. He even let the king borrow some money. Imagine having so much that you can loan the King of England money. Of course, their family attended the Church of England on a regular basis. But not William Penn. Oh no, he's a rebel. And just look at him. Rebel. He joined a radical and hated group called the Society of Friends, the Quakers. They had crazy beliefs like all people are equal in the eyes of God. Oh, heavens no. Oh, yes. For joining the outlaw group of the Quakers, William Penn got kicked out of college, got a whooping from his daddy. He even was put in jail for a time. Oh, the shock, the scandal. Well, when William Penn's dad died, King Charles II still owed money. So, guess who the king owes now? That's right. Good, class. William Penn. So, William Penn says, "Looky here, King. I've got a deal for you. You can pay me back by giving me some land in the New World. Then I and fellow Quakers can go and practice our form of Christianity as we want, without the Church of England interfering or bothering us." To the King, Charles II, this was a smashing idea. It was a win-win. It was like killing two birds with one stone. Well, you know what I mean. He paid William Penn with a piece of land larger than all of England. So, William Penn was off to the New World. He started a colony called Pennsylvania, which means Penn's Woods. And it would be a colony not just for Quakers, but for any and everyone. Could that be why the big city of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania is known as the City of Brotherly Love? I tell you what, that William Penn sure does look familiar.